But anyway, it's my honor to introduce Jim Wilms, and he's going to tell the story of Unicover. For those of you online, George, Alan, can you see the shared screen?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Take it away, Jim.
This is going to be probably as much a conversation as a presentation. And
Hi, everyone.
hi. I'm just going to tell you about the story of Unicover for maybe its first 25 years. And by the way, I know I'm supposed to only take half an hour if I run into that whistle.
You can go longer than a half hour.
First, just a tiny bit about me. I grew up in a farm town in southern Idaho. I got an engineering degree from the University of Idaho. I got an MBA from Harvard University. And then I went to the Procter & Gamble company headquarters in Cincinnati. And I will tell you right up front, I'm not a stamp collector. I'm not a first day cover collector. I'm not a coin collector. I'm not a philatelist. I'm not a numismatist. I'm none of those things. Okay. I did, like a lot of kids, collect stamps when I was a kid. I'd buy the bag of 1,000 stamps from the Woolworths. And occasionally I had enough money to buy a packet of stamps from Garceland Stamp Company. But I don't know, I have no idea what happened. I discovered girls and other things and baseball cards, you know, whatever, but stamps went by the way. I did learn something very interesting at Procter & Gamble before I ever became involved with Unicover. And that is, I was there ultimately managing a $250 million a year business. And I was researching the archives for ideas, for things to promote. You're always looking for marketing stuff. And I ran across something called the Ivory Stamp Club of the Air. The Ivory Stamp Club of the Air was something that P&G operated in the 1930s for 10 years or so. And the kids could send in an ivory bar soap wrapper and get a packet of stamps. And the interesting thing about all of this and how it really relates is they created about 7 million stamp collectors, kid stamp collectors at that point in time. There's never been an event in this country or probably anywhere in the world that introduced as many kids to stamp collecting as the Ivory Stamp Club of the Air. And it relates to Unicover in this sense. That was in the 30s. Those kids, you know, started getting interested in baseball cards or girls or boys or whatever it was, and they left stamp collecting and came back to the hobby, a portion of them, when they became empty nesters in the 1950s and 60s. And that resulted in the absolute peak of the stamp market in the United States, the stamp collecting market in the United States in the 1960s and 1970s. And it has been on a decline ever since, because there hasn't been any comparable input at the front end with kids, because you got to wait 30 or 40 years before they come back to stamp collecting. Mm-hmm. And so even though I was in the soap biz out there, I learned something about stamp collecting. And so I came to Unicover, and I'll get a little bit into this later, but I came to Unicover because I wanted to get back to the West. I was headquartered in Cincinnati, had a good job, making good money. I really missed the West and the small towns and that sort of thing. It was pure serendipity that I ended up here in Cheyenne working for Unicover. So what I'd like to do now is turn to the early years of Unicover. The beginning of Unicover was really James A. Helzer. Jim, we called him. Other employees called him Mr. Helzer, but I certainly called him Jim. Started his in his father's basement when he was in junior high school, because servicing first day covers in those days, as some of you may recall, involved figuring out when the first day of issues were going to be, sending a pre-addressed envelope to the requisite post office with the money to put the stamp on it to send it back to you. And it was awfully easy to miss some of those dates. And he figured out that he could provide a service handling servicing of first day covers for people, even when he was a junior in junior high school. And he built a little business called the James A. Helzer Company.
Was that here?
Right here,
Okay.
in Cheyenne. He was a native of Cheyenne. And then his father worked for Western Ratchet Outfitters here in Cheyenne, which did a lot of direct marketing of Western gear besides its retail operations. And so he got interested in direct mail marketing from his father's business, and he worked down there in that store some. He in fact became an American First Day Cover Society member when he was a senior in high school. And that's probably fairly uncommon these days.
Alan here is a member.
Well, I used to be a member, not anymore. But anyway, let's turn to Fleetwood then. Fleetwood was started by Harry Ior in 1929, and this is the very first Fleetwood first day cover. 1921, George Rogers Clark first day cover. 29, sorry, George Rogers Clark first day cover with a cachet on it. Ior's sister married a guy by the name of E. Milner Peck. This is all trivia, but I thought you might find it interesting anyway. E. Milner Peck in 1950 and became a partner of Eeyore's, and then he took over Fleetwood as a company and ran it. And it was located, I honestly don't remember, but I think it was somewhere in Pennsylvania. And he ran that until 1968. He was a fairly old guy at that point, in his late 80s, and he wanted Fleetwood to continue, and he was looking for somebody to take over the business. And he met Jim Helzer at a stamp show somewhere that Jim went to. He persuaded Jim to buy Fleetwood. Now, Jim was a senior at Yale University at the time, and he had zip squat for money. And he managed to persuade a local bank here to give him the money for a fully leveraged buyout of the Fleetwood Company. I don't honestly know how much money was involved there, but I know that it was a lot more than he had. And one of the bankers took a share of the company and put in some of the money there in order to get the bank to do that. So he then had the situation.
When did that happen?
1968.
68. Okay.
68.
In Cheyenne?
Here in Cheyenne. And he pulled that off. He bought the company. He moved the whole inventory here to Cheyenne. And his father actually took care of managing the business while Jim was finishing up his. So he then merged Fleetwood with the James A. Helzer Company to create Unicover. And just got the Fleetwood trade name. The Unicover as a name is exactly what you might think. It was an attempt to be modern sounding, one cover, one first stick cover, Unicover. And that's how that came about. He then rented a small office on Randall Avenue and ran the business out of that small office with, I think, 4 employees initially. Then it came the thing that really put Unicover and Fleetwood on the map, and that was the moon landing in 1969, and the Fleetwood moon landing cover, of which he sold a gazillion, and it made a good amount of money. That was the first big marketing activity that he did, and that became, he recognized something that we later gave the mantra event marketing. And you're going to hear about a number of those things as I continue through this presentation. That's really what Unicover was about, was event marketing. The second big activity was the bicentennial. And that is not a typo. if it had anything to do with the bicentennial, people bought it. I mean, and not just collectibles. I mean, mugs, towels, whatever. It was literally the bicentennial. It was the single biggest commercial activity in this country, really, up to that point in time. Jim put forth really heavy marketing of these stamps and of first stick covers of these stamps and panels and all kinds of extensions on that, and went to his first big stamp show in Philadelphia for the bicentennial stamp show that happened in Philadelphia that year. And he spent the money to buy really elaborate exhibits, and buy things to exhibit. And it turns out that those exhibits and the materials that he bought for that stamp show became the basis of the National First Stick Cover Museum here in Cheyenne, on Randall. He came back. He bought the building. I think it was a law office before he bought it. It was more or less across the street from where his main offices were. And he did some really unusual things. He bought the postal wall from the post office in Bear Oil, Wyoming. And that was an old post office that was shut down, and they were selling off the parts and pieces. And he bought that wall of a counter and the boxes and that sort of thing, and put that post office in the National First Stick Cover Museum, and got a license from the Postal Service for the handsome sum of $1 a year to be able to operate that as an actual U.S. post office. Wow. And we sold out all the boxes down there. And it ultimately became a real problem because, we had lots of things on exhibit there, the penny black first stick cover and a lot of really interesting things. But with that post office there, we had to have 2 full-time employees in that building all the time. And we were getting $1 a year from the Postal Service to do that. And we finally reached a point where we just couldn't afford to do that. And we said to the Postal Service, we'd like the same kind of contract that other contract post offices have, which was basically amounted to enough money to pay the employees. And they wouldn't hear it. They said, you got a $1 contract. So we we abandoned that and we sold off the exhibits and the collections that were in there and closed the National First Day Cover Museum. You know, it was a marketing thing we did. I mean, it felt good, but it really was a marketing thing anyway, as part of our whole strategy to grow first day cover collecting in the United States. Okay, let's move on. The Unicover expansion. The 1970s were really good for Unicover, made a lot of money, and embarked upon creating this building. It was built in 4 stages, had about 100,000 square feet in it. We got land on Parsley Boulevard out on the south side. We got an industrial revenue bond through the city of Cheyenne in order to finance that.
Jim, can I interrupt? Have you entered the picture at this point?
This is right about where I entered the picture.
Okay. Sorry.
It was completed in 4 phases. Phase 4 was completed in 1980. And in fact, that's when I started. Let's move on a little bit here. I apologize, by the way, for the quality of the pictures here. I just had to work with stuff I had laying around the house and what I could get on the internet. And, you know, some of it's kind of grainy and not very good. And besides, I'm not a very good photographer. Anyway, one of the things that Jim did in the 1970s that marked a major change in what Fleetwood was all about was to create full color caches and provide historical information on the back of each envelope that told the story of what the stamp was commemorating, why it was issued, when it was issued, and that sort of thing. Ultimately, over the life of the company, we commissioned over 14,000 original works of art. And I want to tell you that storing 14,000 original works of art and keeping them safe and protected from the elements is a challenge, but we did it. One of the things that happened then is Jim was contracting with a printing company here locally to print the first day covers, to print the advertising that he was mailing. We were mailing lots and lots and lots of direct mail advertisements. And that printing company failed to deliver on a major advertising campaign. The net result of which was Unicover ended up owning the printing company. And that's how Unicover got into the printing business. And in due course, Unicover became a fully vertically integrated operation. Not just the printing company, but we had stamp affixing and binding and computing and marketing and machines to fold envelopes. And we had in fact, the largest printing plant in the state of Wyoming by the time we got through with that activity. And it gave us total control over the marketing that we wanted to do and over the quality of the products we were producing. But I will say this, just as an interesting aside for you all, every single stamp was torn down by hand. We never could figure out a machine that could tear the stamps without ending up with weird perforations. But we had employees who just had a remarkable skill for being able to tear stamps. They could tear. I remember watching one young woman there tear 100 sheets at a time. She'd do this, and then.
Now, did she have a sponge or did she lick them?
Oh, we created our own equipment, invented our own equipment to stick the stamps.
Okay.
No, but the tearing down process was done by hand. And we had a group of employees who could do that and do it so you had perfect perforations. And then we had an inspection process to make sure that things didn't get out that had crooked perforations or tears in the stamps or whatever. Then we commenced a quest for diversification. This was in the late 1970s. The Franklin Mint, who was a big collectibles company at that time, tried to buy Unicover, but that deal didn't go through. And so Unicover then began to really try and diversify, created a whole gob of programs, might be some of those even that you brought, Evan, things like First Day Cover of the Month Society, of International First Day Covers, Flora and Fauna of the World, stamps that featured fauna, mint stamps of the world, and so on and so forth. Quite a number of those kinds of programs to diversify away from just U.S. First Day Covers. We then, flip one there. We then began looking at other things that we could do. We began selling art prints. We were commissioning art anyway. The one up on the left actually is an original piece, hangs in my house now, but the others are examples of prints we created. And by and large, what we did was put related postage stamps on them and get them postmarked first day of issue. So they were differentiated from just regular old art prints, but they were all signed and numbered by the artists. Chris Calley did a lot of work for us. Don Balke did a lot of work for us. I'm sorry. I don't know. Oh yeah, Chris's dad absolutely was an artist. Paul Calley did a lot of work for us. Paul Calley, this is a digression, but Paul Calley did a lot of design work for the U.S. Postal Service on space postage stamps. Move on a page. We also decided to, since we were creating a lot of art, to try and reach out in a totally different arena. And so we started creating porcelain plates, thimbles, bells, cups, whatever. These are just some examples. The one in the center there actually was that art was done by an artist that lives over in Encampment, Wyoming. The one on the right is Russian, what's called Palic art. And the one on the left was done by a British artist, and I don't remember the scoop on that one. On to the next. So this is not a sheet of stamps. You might think it is, but it's not. It's a sheet of labels of birds and flowers of the 50 states. And we created it as a result of our entry into the commemorative cover business. We decided that we didn't want to be limited to what post offices did, but rather we wanted to be able to do things that we could create. So we created commemorative covers, and in this case, we created a set of 50 covers called Birds and Flowers of the 50 States. We had, that's the artwork actually that appeared on the covers. And then we had them postmarked on the anniversary of statehood in the various state capitals. And it made, and then provided the usual historical information and so on. So it made an interesting story for people. I'm going to come back to this one because it's part of another interesting story. Jim really began a major staffing up at this point, following this. And I joined up in February of 1980 and came in initially as the head of the marketing operations, since Procter & Gamble is the foremost marketing company in the world. And then in due course, I became the executive vice president and chief operating officer of the company. That was before too long. Because one thing Jim Helzer did recognize is he was what you would recognize this term. He was what we called an entrepreneur in heat. And he really needed somebody who was entrepreneurial, but not an entrepreneur in heat,
Yeah, I know some of those people.
to run the business on a day-to-day basis. And that really was what my job became. There were times it seemed like, and I'm sorry if this is being recorded, it's probably not good, but there was a sense of having to follow around him, behind him with a scoop shovel and clean up some of the messes. But brilliant entrepreneur and absolutely responsible for Unicover's creation and its growth. We now went to, next slide, what I call the middle period. This is the period between 1980 and 1990, or thereabouts. Unicover had grown from nothing in 1968 to about a $10 million per year business, sales-wise, in 1980. The United States First Aid Cover Society, which was our premier program of first aid covers of U.S. stamps, had about 25,000 subscribers at this point who took every issue. And that really was the sort of ground floor of our business. But we then needed to continue diversifying and thinking broadly about how to grow the business. So let's go to the next one here. We then went to stamp agencies, by which in general we sold mint stamps on behalf of foreign postal administrations. China was the very first one. Jim and I signed a contract with the People's Republic of China postal folks in fall of 1980. And this is one of those stories that I love to tell. We were the first United States with the government of the People's Republic of China following the Shanghai Accords. Went there in the 1970s and made the contacts, and then we entered into a contract to represent China for the sale of its stamps and philatelic products in North America. Well, yeah, in North America. What we did, initially we signed up China, Sweden, France, the USSR, Israel, New Zealand, and some others. But the basic strategy was we want some big mainstream countries that people are already collecting, like Israel, and Australia, and so on. And then we want countries that people can't collect because they don't have any way to get them, like China, the USSR, Hungary, even Brazil and Chile. It was virtually impossible for collectors in this country to collect stamps of those countries because nobody else was offering them. And so that's during the period of 1980 through 2022. Those are all the countries that we represented at one point or another. Some of them for the whole time, some of them for short periods. Canada, for example, I negotiated with Canada myself for 2 years just to sell Canadian stamps in the United States to make it easier for people to buy them, because the customs and border issues between the US and Canada at that point made collecting Canadian stamps hard. And it was only 2 years before they decided they didn't like paying us the commission. Because that's what we did on all of these, is we sold at face value, the stamps at face value of the country involved, converted into US dollars, and then we got paid a commission.
But you didn't create first aid covers for those countries.
No, we were selling official products.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not to say that we didn't sometimes create first aid covers from these countries. We did, but these particular agreements were all just to sell the stamps of those countries. There are two exceptions to that. One of them is the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the other one is the Federated States of Micronesia. In both those cases, we became the stamp issuing bureaus for those countries. We designed their stamp programs, got the governments to approve them. We commissioned the art, designed the postage stamps, printed the stamps here in Cheyenne, supplied those countries with their stamps for their internal needs, and then put on our marketing hats and marketed those stamps and official products worldwide.
How long did that last?
The Republic of the Marshall Islands lasted about 20 years. Micronesia lasted a shorter period than that. The Micronesians started getting greedy, and so I finally just called Sam Malamud at Intergovernmental Stamp Corporation and said, how would you like to have Micronesia back? Because I took it away from him in the first place.
I have to interject a funny story here. A really, really good friend of mine, Lisa Sherrod, she came to me the other day with some Marshall Island stamps, and she gave them to me with a sly smile on her face. And she goes, do you know who designed these? And I did. She worked for Unicover.
Yep. So anyway, let's move along a little bit further here with the next slide. Look now at some of the major marketing events of the 1980s. Remember I said our mantra became event marketing. We decided that the way to be successful was to find things that would get a lot of publicity. And then that was ended up being free advertising for us. That got a lot of publicity coverage. And I'll mention just a few of those. The royal wedding in 1981, Jim Helzer was so smart, so savvy. He commissioned the art in 1975 for the royal wedding, which wasn't announced until 1981. And the art was to go on first day covers from all the countries of the British Commonwealth, because he knew if there was a royal wedding of Charlie and Diana, then there were going to be stamps from all the countries of the British Commonwealth. And that allowed us to have this remarkable collection of covers, international covers, commemorating the royal wedding. And he got the designs done by a fellow by the name of Jeffrey Matthews, who happened to be the official artist of the Queen. Oh, and that was another one of Jim's unique capabilities. He saw where there were things that you could use as selling points that would set us apart from anybody else out there in the business. The next thing that came along was the first space shuttle, Columbia. Tremendous amount of publicity about that. U.S. stamps issued to commemorate it. And so we climbed on board with a lot of advertising and products there.
Do you have slides for those?
I do not. But the next one. The next one in line was Birds and Flowers of 50 States. Remember I said I was going to come back to that stamp sheet? Go back to the stamp sheet. Right there. We did that because we thought the U.S. should issue a sheet of stamps commemorating the birds and flowers of the 50 states. And we made that recommendation to the Postal Service. And you can't do that. We can't print stamps with that range of color and that degree of detail. So it can't be done. So we came back to Cheyenne and printed that and went back to DC and basically said to the Postal Service and the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, if you can't do it, we can.
Yeah.
And so if you were to take that sheet the Postal Service issued in 1982 of the birds and flowers of 50 states and laid it up next to that and looked at each individual image, you would see guess what? This art and the art of the Postal Service were done by the same artist, Arthur Singer. And all Arthur did was go in and he took the ones that he'd done for us and he'd turn a bird around, or he'd add something looking this way, or he'd add or he'd take a flower out or do something like that. You can see that they're basically the same art, just tweaked enough to be different. And so that gave us a tremendous opportunity with the birds and flowers of the 50 states, because we had Arthur Singer's art that we had commissioned here, and we put it on our first day covers with the stamps that he designed for the Postal Service that coincidentally looked a whole lot like our cachets. And you know, it's just one of those wonderful things that shows that a little company parked in Cheyenne, Wyoming, can get the big guys to do the right thing if you're smart about how you go about doing it. And so that just happened to be a picture of the album that we put the covers in.
Excuse me, he would have had to draw some of the same birds up to 7 different times. I mean, 7 states have.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And some states have the same flower.
Yeah. And if you look down through it, you'll see they're different.
Yeah.
But they got the same birds in them,
yeah.
Or some of them have the same flowers in them. So, and Arthur Singer was recognized as a contemporary of Roger Torrey Peterson, who was recognized as the foremost bird artist and living bird artist in the country at the time.
Steve, by the way, I have to sing his praises. He's, first of all, massive collector of birds and stamps. Gave a wonderful presentation here earlier this year, but he also is the editor of the Topical Association's journal.
Cool. Okay. Now, see if there's anything else I wanted to mention there. This is a good place to go next. These are the first express mail stamps. And there's a story behind this that is not generally known. We had known that these express mail stamps were coming out. The Postal Service kept people in the business in the loop on stamps that were coming so that we could prepare. We had a good relationship that way. But in this instance, they issued a press release in July saying that the stamps were being issued and that the covers, and it happens to be the ones on the bottom there, were going to be carried into space aboard the shuttle Challenger. And that those would be the first day covers of the express mail stamps. Well, here's the deal. We would receive first day covers of every U.S. postage stamp. And the Postal Service, in announcing this, said that was going to be limited to 1 per person. And they considered Unicover to be a person. And so we packed up our attorneys and we went to DC and we sat down with the General Counsel of the Postal Service and the General Counsel of NASA and Senator Wallop, and had a conversation over a set of regulations that we brought with us that came right out of the regulations governing the space shuttle program, which, to wit, said, the space shuttle shall not carry anything except things with scientific value. This, what they were going to do, was a prima facie violation of their own regulations. And to top it off, several companies, including Unicover, had cited that regulation in turning us down. Now, here's where this story goes. we had this conversation with them, and they took the position of, we're the big guys and you're just the little ants from Wyoming, and go away and leave us alone. And we said, we'll go away, but here's a copy of the injunction we've got prepared to stop the launch of the space shuttle. And we're going to take it to Judge Ewing T. Kerr, federal district judge in Cheyenne, who had not long before that ruled the windfall profits tax on oil companies to be unconstitutional. And we knew Judge Kerr very well. Now, he wouldn't do anything for us personally, but we had a very strong inclination that if we laid this story on him in an injunction, he would have no compunctions about stopping the launch of the space shuttle. And we suggested that they just take the covers off the shuttle and just take them off the shuttle, solve the problem. And they said, well, they couldn't do that because the shuttle was inside its 60-day countdown window. And they had a satellite from Pakistan on board that shuttle that Pakistan had paid $90 million to get on there. And they were going to be facing an enormous international problem if that shuttle didn't launch on time. NASA and the Postal Service blinked. And what they agreed to do was instead to change the first day of issue of the stamps to the first day of issue in that cover on the top on a different date than the launch of the shuttle. And that actually, the one on the top is our Fleetwood first day cover of that. But we still had the issue that we knew our collectors would want that shuttle cover down there. And so the Postal Service sent out its release. And in it, it said you could get that cover, but you had to place individual orders. If you wanted more than one, you had to place separate individual orders for those covers. And they had to be postmarked after the shuttle launched. So we made arrangements with the local post office here. We printed up 45,000 orders, envelopes, order forms, put the stamps on them, made arrangements with the local post office, had our people there at Unicover watching the TV so that when the shuttle launched, they drove the truck down to the post office here and offloaded 45,000 orders.
Did you send a bulk mail?
No, but here's the kicker on it. Those orders arrived. They went to Kansas City. That's where all the orders went. They went to Kansas City. Those orders arrived there, and I get this call from a senior official at the Postal Service saying, is there any chance that you could just cut us a check for all of those and let us just throw these orders forms you sent us away? And I said, no. I want to receive 45,000 covers in individual envelopes coming back to us.
What if there weren't that many on the space shuttle?
There were 250,000 on the space shuttle. And we knew that if we got those postmarked, we knew the shuttle was scheduled to launch in the middle of the night, 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. We knew if we got those things to the post office and got a postmark, then that we were going to get all we wanted. And we did. We got them all.
Wow.
But once again, this little company in Cheyenne took on a couple of the really big guys and made them play by their own rules. Is what it boiled down to.
Jim, I'm sorry to say this. We have the meeting will stop at 8 o'clock, right?
No, we should be good.
Oh, you good?
Oh,
Well, I'll try and speed it on.
you're good.
Last
good.
Stop.
No, you're fine.
All right. Keep going.
What?
Value of that bottom cover.
Last time I looked, about $100. We sold them for $15.35, the face value of the stamp.
Alan, you got one?
No.
I do.
Really?
Ken,
I bought one for each of my kids, actually,
that's great.
even though they're not collectors either. Okay, so moving on. As part of our process of diversification, one of the things we started doing was selling collections of duck stamps. And it really started with marketing first day covers, if you call them that, of the federal migratory waterfowl stamp. We got postmarked on the day the stamps were released and put postage next to them. And those were well received. So there were a lot of states that were selling revenue stamps. Like the Game and Fish here sells a conservation stamp. And a lot of them had ducks on them. So we launched this program in which people could get every year a complete collection of state duck stamps in mint condition with an album and this sort of thing. It turned out to be a really great success. It was endorsed by the National Wildlife Federation, which was helpful. It became a $3.5 million a year business by itself. And that led into also getting stamps, duck stamps, if you will, from foreign countries. We arranged for the first USSR duck stamp. We arranged for the first Israel duck stamp. And we bought some from other countries that were already issuing them. Let's click along here. Now we're to 1988. The shuttle Challenger disaster was really a bucket of cold water on the people of the United States. The shuttle was sort of its favorite plaything. And we were trying to figure out two things. One, how could we capitalize on the relaunch of the space shuttle program? And how could we get into the coin business? We've been dabbling in the coin business, selling one here and there, putting them in philatelic numismatic covers and that sort of thing, but never really serious about it. And I was, ironically, I was on my way to Europe for something or another in the spring of 1988. And I had this epiphany. I said, if we could find a country to issue a coin commemorating the relaunch of the space shuttle program with the shuttle Discovery, I think that could be a spectacular success. And Jim agreed with me. And I had an associate who had some connections to a mint that had a contract with the Republic of the Marshall Islands to mint coins for them. And we put forth this proposal. And Jim pushed me to do television advertising. And so we hired Buzz Aldrin as our spokesperson for our television advertising. And a couple of quick things about this. We didn't have time to test our television advertising because there just wasn't time. We just had to make it and go out there. And about, I guess it must have been 24 hours before the launch of the shuttle, we'd been running some advertising in some markets with that. I got a phone call from, I think it was NBC, saying they had a 60-second spot available in the last 6 minutes of the launch window for the shuttle the next day. And for $60,000, we could run it. And I consulted with Jim Helzer, and we swallowed hard, and we put that out there. And we had hired a company in Omaha to take our orders for us. They had 450 operators, and it busied them out. They took something on the order of 10,000 orders in the first 5 minutes of the shuttle launch. And we ended up selling 1.1 million of these $5 shuttle coins. And we had been savvy enough to know that we didn't want this to be a one-off deal. And so we had behind that a collection of 24 coins called Milestones in Space collection that were $50 face value proof coins. And we went to the people who bought those. And we shipping and handling. So it was $1,200 and change to buy the collection. And we got 15,000 people to sign up. So that really was, oh yeah, a little bit. Let's go on to the next one here. We then that set us into the coin business in a serious way. The next year was the 20th anniversary of the first moon landing. We did again. We used Buzz Aldrin, even more appropriate. We had a coin. We continued to market that collection of proof silver coins, and we used television advertising and broad national print, things like Parade and TV Guide, and even Sunday's freestanding coupon inserts. Let's move on a ratchet here.
Was that the 20th or the 30th?
20th.
You had 30th on the stamp.
Oh, yeah. 99. That's okay.
Yeah.
30th anniversary.
Sorry.
30th.
My mistake.
Yeah.
My mistake. Sorry.
Just wondered.
Didn't say I was perfect.
Philatelic, we'll catch every little detail.
Yeah.
Detail.
So anyway, the next thing to really come along was the 50th anniversary of World War II and the various and sundry battles out there. We did a Marshall Islands stamp series, which was broadly recognized as one of the best stamp series out there. The U.S. Postal Service did one as well. We did products for the Marshall Islands. We did products with the U.S. stamps. We launched a collection of coins called Legendary Aircraft of World War II. And then we did, I did one that I just have to mention to you. I had signed a contract with East Germany to sell their coins in North America. Little ambivalent about whether that could be successful or not, but it actually turned out to have a golden side to it, and it was this. When the Berlin Wall went down, I contacted a woman by the name of Mrs. Klein, who was the head of the Deutsche Handelsbank, and said, the Deutsche Handelsbank from East Germany, ought to issue a coin to commemorate the fall of the Berlin Wall. That it's a great opportunity. So they issued what's called the Brandenburger Tor, a coin with the Brandenburg Gate on it, in copper nickel and in silver. And we had the rights for North America to sell that. And we sold, I think, 42,000 of the copper nickel coins. We have now become, Unicover has become a $30+ million a year company. We had 330 employees. And I'm going to take we're getting close to the end here. I'm going to take just a minute here to talk about a little bit about the early part of the 1990s, and then I'll stop. But why don't you go on to the next thing? The 1990s, there were several events that we latched onto. The 50th anniversary of the Battle of Britain was one. We had a coin. We had television marketing. We had stamps. Go on to the next one. Then there was Desert Storm. Tremendous amount of publicity about Desert Storm. Marshall Islands stamps. We had coins. We were marketing heavily. And then the Iraqis started killing the Kurds, and that whole project died. Go on again. The next thing up was Elvis Presley, 1993. Jim and I really couldn't believe that Elvis Presley could be popular among stamp collectors. But we did a little test advertising and concluded that we were wrong. And so we went out and we bought national advertising and TV Guide, Parade, USA Weekend, a number of other things. And we ran that advertising before that stamp issued at the beginning of January. And I'll never forget when the first 35 trays of mail came in. We said, oh, crap. How can we, I mean, a tray of mail is about 700 orders. And we put everybody in the company, including me, keying orders into the computer system. Remember, I said we had 330 employees. I mean, if you had access to a computer, you were keying orders. Because in a period of 2 weeks, we got 175,000 orders for this set of 5 birthday covers. That translates into 2.3 million birthday covers. I tell you one quickie story about that. The deal with the Postal Service was for businesses like ours is we didn't get charged for having postmarks applied because we were paying full face value for the stamps and they were never traveling through the mail stream. If you think about it, the envelopes weren't going through the mail stream, they were coming by truck, you know. And so we shipped 2.3 million first aid covers out to be postmarked in Kansas City. And I got a call saying, we're going to charge you $0.05 a piece to put the postmarks on those. That required an intervention by Al Simpson personally.
Wow.
With the chairman of the Postal Board of Governors and the Postmaster General, because it was also a violation of their regulations. Their regulations said in writing that we wouldn't be charged. So we won again. It was stressful because there was also another rule out there that said we only had a certain number of days to ship the merchandise to customers before we had to refund their money. So there were a lot of challenges associated with these and with things that came after. Gladly, I only had to deal with Priscilla Presley once on these. I had to deal with Priscilla Presley on the coins several times, and it was a horrible experience. Let's move on. So we're into growing the coin business. The coin business now is 2/3 of Unicover's business. Let's switch one more here. We went into a number of special agreements with countries to, in some cases, sell their coins exclusively in North America. In some cases, issue specific kinds of things. And that's just a list of some of the ones that we did. Let's go one more. What happened then, and this will be the end of my presentation, is we began a gradual decline as a business. We did expand our commercial printing significantly to fill in for the decline. We printed things like UWYO magazine for the University of Wyoming. We printed Wyoming Wildlife magazine. We printed the Wyoming State map. We printed the tourism things. We did other commercial printing for private businesses and so on. We began marketing the original art, not prints, but those 14,000 originals that we had. We did run into an issue with the Postal Service in which we prevailed once again. It's for postal administrations. That resulted, after sending a letter that documented how they couldn't possibly be making any money doing what they were doing, a meeting in Senator Thomas' office with Representative Cuban, the Postmaster General of the United States, the general inspector of the Postal Service, and me and Jim, in which we laid it all out. And when we got all done, the Postmaster General at the time said, if your analysis is correct, our analysis was they were losing about $7 million a year doing this, that he would direct that it be stopped. 6 months later, their general accounting people issued a report saying we were correct, and they stopped selling foreign postage stamps. So we won one more time. We started selling even more plates. We began, importantly, a business with the United States Mint. And here's the one last story of how things should work. The Mint started selling foreign coins, or announced that they were going to sell foreign coins. I sent a letter to Phil Deal, who was the director of the Mint at the time, and laying out all the reasons why they shouldn't, including the fact that that was a space that was occupied by private business. And the government had no business competing with private businesses, especially small ones, and we were all small. Phil Deal got on an airplane and flew out to Cheyenne and sat down with us and talked about it. And we showed him what we could do. And the result of that was we began packaging U.S. Mint coins here in Cheyenne. Not the ones in boxes, but the ones that were sealed in packages. We designed the packaging, we printed it, we assembled the coins into it here and shipped them off to them. In fact, there was a time period when there were far more U.S. coins in our facility here in Cheyenne than in all the banks in Wyoming put together. And we got into even more coin programs. And that, I think that's where I'm going to stop. I've taken way more time than I was supposed to.
Wow. What an amazing story, Jim.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Do we have time for a few questions?
I do.
Yeah, so when did the actual company stop doing business? Are you still in business now, or?
Unicover is not still in business. I left the company. I retired as the president and CEO in 2013, and sat on the board of directors for a few years after that. And I believe the company went out of business about 2023.
Where do they have a facsimile business or something now in the old Kmart on Hershey?
That's where I moved the company there.
Okay.
In 2007.
I had heard that Unicover closed and reopened under another name.
Well, that was the first aid cover business that went to Fleetwood.
Well, the Fleetwood First Aid Cover business, I sold to Mystic Stamp Company.
So did you deal with Don Sunman?
I did.
All right.
Dealt with him a lot.
Any questions online, George, Alan?
I'm good. That was excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question not related to your talk. When did you retire from P&G?
Well, I didn't retire from P&G. I left P&G in 1980
Okay.
and moved out here. You know, I was an Idaho kid and I wanted to get back west.
So you wouldn't have known some of the people I knew there.
Probably not.
I have a question.
Yep.
Are there any private companies actually still doing this, or did the government take over everything?
Well, yeah, Mystic Stamp Company does Fleetwood, and they have their traditional stamp business. Littleton Coin Company, which is a partner company of Mystic, run by Don Sunman's brother, does coins. And you know, I otherwise I don't really know that there's anybody out there doing this stuff in a big way.
Do you think it's something that's gonna move over into the future with the future generations?
No. Being frank with you, I mean,
I have a
the stamp.
question or two.
Yeah, go
about,
ahead.
Micronesia and Marshall Islands, and exactly what years. I mean, I can send you an email if you need to look that up.
Well, the Marshall Islands, we started the stamp business with them in 1988.
88.
Mhm.
Okay.
And we're still doing that through about 2000. Micronesia started 2 or 3 years after that. You know, I remember making a couple of trips to Micronesia to work on that project, and I don't remember when I sold it to Intergovernmental Philatelic.
Could you look that up? 'Cause
I don't know whether I even have that information.
Because I could use that for an article in publication from the birthplace
Kind of like
society.
kids in a candy store.
Yeah, I don't think I have that information. I'm not
So
dodging you there. I just don't
88
think I
till
have.
about 2000, or you said
88 to about 2020
oh, 20,
for the Marshall Islands.
oh, 2020, okay.
I heard you like you said the first time. There's 2020. Okay.
Jim, I'm passing these albums around. I assume you sent these out with empty pages and then people would fill them in as they went
Yes.
along?
Piece of paper.
Yes, that looks like
Oh, yeah.
First Day Cover of the Month Society
Yeah.
from this angle.
Any other questions? By the way, Ken Luke here is a stamp dealer in Denver.
Mhm.
And Bill Arnold,
Evergreen.
Evergreen. Bill Arnold is a coin dealer here in Cheyenne.
Mhm.
So, you know, is stamp collecting going away? I mean, the auctions I'm betting on, there's no indication that anything's going down. It's insane bidding, you know. The market where we pumped out 200,000 first day covers, yeah, that there's no market for that because the supply is so much higher than the demand,
Mhm.
you know. But on the high end, that's not going away.
Well, I think, yeah, I agree with that. But in terms of the days of when people used to just collect every mint stamp
Yeah,
as they came out, those days are gone.
yeah.
In general, they're gone. And part of it is because of the price of the stamps. I mean, we saw that in our business because stamps had been 3 cents forever and then 4 cents. And then you got to the 1980s and they just began a steady march up. And we saw that in the correspondence from our customers because we had to pass those costs on to our customers. And it just became increasingly expensive. Then the other thing is, obviously, the use of mail has gone down dramatically because of the internet.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember as a kid, and I'm sure you all do too, soaking stamps off of envelopes that came to the house or the business or wherever. You know, how many stamps do you actually see in the mail now? That other than ones you put on. I mean, I still put old stamps on, believe it or not. I put old stamps on.
We all do, all us philatelists, you know.
I'm not a philatelist. But I
you
do
have
it.
them. But that's a question I had. You must have gotten a massive amount of stamps at Unicover.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you resell those in
No.
bulk?
No.
No?
They just got run through the shredder. You know, the canceled ones.
Yeah,
Came in
yeah.
because we got huge volumes.
Yeah. Wow. It could have been another little revenue stream.
Yeah. Not worth the money to deal with it though.
It's amazing how the postal service jumps when the senators get involved
Uh-huh.
and when they know that they're wrong.
Mhm.
It takes them a long time to admit it, but they do finally admit it.
Oh, yeah. They don't admit it publicly, but
Well, Jim, thank you so much. It just occurred to me that we didn't bring a present for you. The only present I think you're going to get is a lot more people asking you to come and give this presentation because every person in this room is member of multiple other societies, the Denver Stamp